Honestly, I didn't even know where to begin with this new moon forecast because there's so much going on this month, so many things to unpack. And it's starting off on the 25th of June, which is the Cancer new moon at around 4 degrees of Cancer, and it will peak at around 11:30 a.m. here in Lisbon. So this new moon is very unique because, as always, it will give us the themes for the month ahead, but this month it's with Jupiter. And Jupiter is going to expand and exaggerate anything it's with. So anything that's going to be happening this month is going to be exaggerated thanks to Jupiter's presence. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. And the themes are going to carry on from the 25th of June until the 24th of July, which is the next new moon in Leo. Jupiter's cycle is around every 12 years. So the last time that Jupiter and the new moon in Cancer were happening at the same time was around 2013. And at that Cancer new moon was not even close together. So what I'm talking about today is that actually Jupiter and the moon are quite close together in this new moon. The effects are definitely going to be stronger. And at the same time, Mercury is also there. With 4 planets in Cancer, it's going to be very emotionally charged, emotionally driven. We're going to feel all the feelings depending on which area of our life it's going to fall in. And we will be going in greater detail by rising sign. Okay. The other thing that's important is that even though we have all the abundance and the prosperity of Jupiter being in Cancer for this new moon, which means that it's going to give us some positivity in the area of life that it's transiting, we have some tension with other areas of our life because Saturn and Neptune are in kind of a tricky position. And so all the winnings that we get, we may not just have them fall into our lap. We may have to work for them a little bit, or we may have to sacrifice something in order to get the things that we need. It's not the kind of straightforward sort of lottery winning transit that you may assume it may be when Jupiter is exalted in Cancer with the moon in Cancer, 2 great placements for these planets. So that's one way to also consider it. The other thing that's happening is that we have 3 planets going retrograde this month, which means that there's going to be some instability in the skies. And again, it doesn't mean that you necessarily will experience that all on the personal level. Depends on what's happening in your chart. But there's general chaos in the skies or general instability in the skies, and you may be the sort of side effect of that happening. The first thing is that both Neptune and Saturn, which are closely conjoined together, means that they're influencing each other and they're generational planets, so they are planets that are affecting world affairs, are going to go retrograde in the first week of July. Neptune's around the 4th of July and Saturn's around the 12th, 13th of July. So in this period, there can be a lot of unrest. Saturn is the planet that wants us to restrain ourselves from doing things, and it's in a very aggressive sign of Aries, so it doesn't really have the capability of doing that. And at the same time, Neptune is also going retrograde. It kind of blurs our vision and doesn't give us clarity when it's changing directions. So because those 2 things are happening in that first week of July, we want to be mindful in the area of our life that it's transiting, that it can be influencing our partnerships, or it can be influencing our decision making. It can be restricting us from getting all the gains that we might receive from having the prosperous new moon in Cancer this month. So some a little bit difficult transits there. Also in that first week of July, around the 7th, Uranus is going to be transiting into Gemini for the first time in 84 years. So around 1941 to 1942, Uranus cross signs into Gemini. And it's very easy to just go back and think, okay, well, what was going on around that is going to be the exact same thing. Those are not the exact same transits. We cannot compare apples for apples. At that time, Saturn was with Uranus at the same time. So there's some changes as well. However, we can look back and say, anytime a planet is changing for the first time in 84 years, it's a big deal. Okay, the more rare the transit, the bigger deal it is. And so this is going to definitely contribute to the changes in telecommunications, to AI technology, etc. It's going to speed things up, and we get this preview from July until November of this year before it enters fully in 2026. So if you have planets between 0 to 2 degrees of Gemini, then this is going to be important for you this month. If you don't, then you may not feel the effects of this transit at all. Okay, so Uranus is a very slow moving transit. It'll be in the sign of Gemini for 7 years. So we have a long time to discuss what the effects of this planetary shift is going to be for you. Now, the other thing that's happening is around the 10th of July, we will be having our full moon in Capricorn. So the way that the month works is starting on the new moon, the 25th of June, it will culminate or peak on the 10th of July in the sign of Capricorn, the opposite sign of Cancer, and then it'll close out again for the new moon at the end of the month on the 24th of July. So when you're planning your energy levels, let's say, or you're planning your month, you can think, okay, I'm going to start something around that new moon period. It's going to peak in that 2-week period, and then it's going to taper off again. We can't be expecting to go, and then sort of drop off a steep incline at the end of the month and start over. That's just not how it works. So have a think about when you're planning your month ahead, that kind of trajectory, and see whether you can get any benefit from that. The other thing that's happening is around the 18th of July when Mercury will go retrograde in Leo until the 11th of August. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. It really depends on where it's transiting in your chart, how Mercury is doing, etc. We'll talk about that for each of your rising signs, but it is happening at the same time as Mars is very unstable in that same few days between the 18th and the 22nd of July. So I think a lot of people are going to be blaming Mercury retrograde for things not going well in their life, when it's actually the Mars transit around 18th to the 22nd of July, which is going to be difficult for quite a lot of people. And that's what we're going to be breaking down today. Mercury's retrograde in Leo can actually be a very productive time. Many of you know from doing readings with me about how we use Mercury retrograde and how I don't believe that it's detrimental in any way. In fact, as I said, it can be very productive, but we want to know when it's going to be productive and when it's going to be problematic, and that's what I'll start to break down more generally in this video. So I think in general, just to keep in the back of our minds that Cancer new moon is a time where we tend to want to have things that are secure in our life, where we want some emotional security around the things that are going on for us. So what's important here is your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, you want to go to the chart calculator in the description box, punch in your birth information with your accurate birth time, and find out what time you were born and what your rising sign or ascendant is. Come back and listen to that timestamp. Again, these are general indications for the month ahead. If you've done readings with me, you know that we go into solar returns, perfections, time lords, all sorts of different kinds of indicators which tell us what we should be focusing on in this year ahead. But you can use this as a general guideline to get a sense of the temperature of this month ahead. Okay. With that in mind, let's begin. For Aries Rising, this is a really interesting month because on the one hand, the new moon is highlighting the area of your life relating to your emotional well-being, meaning that what we actually want to see is you focusing on your grounding capabilities, how you're feeling emotionally, what you're doing to stabilize in that area of your life. But on the other hand, all the other planetary energies are saying, we're working. We don't have time for that. So there is a tension between those two things that are happening. And the emotional space is important. Now, on the one hand, it can also relate to a need to focus on your family more. It can be something that you're looking at property, you're doing something within the home space. So all of these themes can be very much activated. But as I said, you're also going through a period of big professional transformation. And we've talked and hinted at this in the last few videos already, but this month, you're really in it. You know, until August, through August, work things are busy. You're going through this professional renewal. And this month, you may also be more prone to burnout. So be mindful around the 18th to the 22nd of July, when Mars is a little bit weak, and remember Mars is your key planet, because you might be finding yourself needing to take a little bit more vitamin C, needing a little bit more rest, and really going back inwards. So to recap, there's that internal experience that you need to solidify and ground. But on the other hand, there's a lot of professional redevelopment that's needing you to put one foot in front of the other. The other thing that's important is around that 18th of July period, Mercury is going to go retrograde. And this is going to be happening for you in the part of the chart associated with creativity. So you'll have an opportunity to get new ideas, think more broadly about the things that you're interested in. You might be engaged in new sports around that time, just general ability to fully express yourself. And I think this is really important to note because you're going through this period of professional redevelopment. That first 2 weeks of July, we already have Saturn and Neptune in Aries going retrograde. So there are going to be some things that are slowing down, but also causing you to go more internal. And then Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 18th of July, which will further put you inwards to say, okay, well, am I happy with the direction I'm going? Do I need to take a pause? Do I need to think more broadly? Do I need to go back into this creative space and rethink a few things? So all of these things are sort of coinciding at the same time. The Mercury retrograde will be from the 18th of July to the 18th of July until the 11th of August. But really this period of creativity can go through until the end of August for you. Now, the other thing is that Uranus is moving into Gemini around the 7th of July. And in this period, it's important if you have planets at 0 to 2 degrees Gemini. But over this next 7 years, it's really going to create some new ideas for how you want to communicate, what kind of new skills you have in your life. So you're going to also redevelop these areas of your life at the same time as having the initial 2.5 years of sort of professional resurgence. So I'm only mentioning it because that 7th of July change of Uranus going into Gemini, coupled with the full moon around the 10th of July, where you're going to be feeling a little bit push-pull between like, do I need to work? Do I need to stay at home? Do I need to go and emphasize my professional career, or do I need to spend more time with my family and the people that are close to me? That's going to feel really accentuated, and it might feel a little bit more distorted because of Uranus's changing signs around that time. So just a little bit of things to think about this month as you plod along. And I know that you like to go 100 miles an hour, but I think it's good opportunity this month to also pace yourself, because the whole summer is going to be quite busy for you. Know that, and just know that maybe this is a time to kind of regroup before you move forward. For Taurus Rising, this new moon is all about tapping into your inner emotional space, but also understanding how to communicate that clearly, because there can be a tendency to over-rationalize certain elements of life, just kind of needing to put one foot in front of the other and get on with things. But in fact, this new moon is highlighting the fact that it's important to be able to express your feelings. So if you feel like you're not so adept at that, then I would recommend something like journaling or automatic writing or some type of prompts to allow you to explore that space. And until around the 4th of July, Venus is still in Taurus. That's going to still continue to give you this sort of magnetism. It's also a great time for self-care, for looking after yourself, for doing something good for yourself. So whether that's massage or taking a bath or looking after your body, rolfing, etc. It's all a nice thing to do in this time, because after that, you'll be feeling more inclined to start thinking about your resources, needing to think about money and kind of getting out of that space again. Now, this new moon is also one about travel. So of course, short trips or going on a sort of trip with your family, let's say, or the people that you call family, will be a nice way to use the energies of this new moon. You may even find yourself wanting to spend more time with your younger siblings or your immediate community and neighbors. So a lot of sort of local action. The only thing is that around mid-July, you may find yourself having some difficulties with your romances or with your children. Maybe one of them is having a hard time or giving you a hard time. So it's not really a great time to add new romances into your life. It's actually a really good time to get rid of romances that are not working for you, but you'll tend to attract romances that aren't that good for you. It's not to say that you can't get into them. It's just that those relationships may not prove very fruitful and may be quite draining. It's definitely one of those watch out for your exes type transits, okay? So 18th to 22nd of July, because at the same time, Mercury is going to be going retrograde at that time. And that's always a time of difficulty in terms of communication in the sign of Leo, which does have something to do with romances as well. So that's one thing I would say. Don't worry too much about what's going on in your romantic life this month, because there can be some bumps around the 18th to 22nd of July. The other reason is that when we have all these planets in Cancer, people get very emotional. And then Mars is in Virgo, so people can get very self-righteous or picky. So those combinations are not really good for developing relationships. Be mindful as well of any injuries that you may incur doing sports around that mid-July period. There is a tendency to sort of not think at that time or want to go really quickly because Mars is in a mercurial sign, which is quite impatient. And you might be multitasking and injure yourself inadvertently. So one to watch out for. Gemini Rising. This is a very interesting period for you because the new moon is going to be activating your second house of money. So there's definitely opportunities for you to make money, to have good gains in this period. Mercury, which is the planet that represents you, is also activated during the time of this new moon and making you focus on those things. Now, bear in mind that because we have some difficult aspects with Saturn and Neptune, your gains may not be so obvious. So it may not be the floodgate of money that you're expecting. But nonetheless, it's still positive for this month ahead in terms of thinking about money, focusing on that, focusing on your career as well, because Jupiter is a planet that's related to your career. And because it's activated during this month, you may also find that things around your career are moving along. The other reason that career might be a big focal point this month is because we have Saturn that's finally unblocking your career until August. So anything that you've been sort of working on, you might find that between now and August, you're gaining a lot of momentum. And you want to be acting on that because now's the right time to do so, even if there's going to be challenges along the way. Now, on the 10th of July, we have the Capricorn full moon. So we have the 25th of June new moon, 10th of July full moon. And in that period, on that 10th of July, you're going to be activating your financial houses. So there can be a little bit of ups and downs where finances are concerned or some level of instability. I'm saying that because right before the full moon on the 7th of July, Uranus is entering Gemini. And this is going to be specifically important for you if you have planets or your ascendant degree at 0 to 2 Gemini. It's not necessarily going to be important for you for the whole 7 years, but it is signaling a really big time where you are entering into a new phase of life where you're going to be breaking free from certain constraints and constructs that you've built for yourself and stepping into a new type of individuality. So I do consider this month very important because from now until November of this year, you get a small preview about what that's going to look like from April 2026 till 2032. And in this period, it's not going to be 7 years of chaos and instability, but there's certainly going to be periods of that where you're starting to break free from certain things and redefine yourself. And we're going to be seeing a little bit of a preview of that in this month, especially around that sort of 7th to 10th of July. Around the middle of the month, when Mercury goes retrograde, from the 18th of July until the 11th of August, this is a really important time because, first of all, Mercury is the planet that governs your whole chart. So we want to pay attention to its transits. And because you're also experiencing this sort of new revelation of Uranus being in the sign of Gemini, it's contributing to a need to step into yourself in some new way. So you might take a course, you might want to develop your leadership, you develop your sense of confidence because Mercury is in Leo, and work on those things. And the effects of this retrograde are going to be through August anyway, so we'll talk more about that. But it's important to note that the Mercury retrograde period is there. It is time of going internal. Be careful about the way that you communicate externally. Sometimes you might say something that you don't actually mean. When Mercury is in Leo, we tend to sort of loudly share something without thinking too quickly. It's a better time to take some courses and really consider what your communication styles are, etc. Around this period, 18th to 22nd of July, you may also find that there are some difficulties at home. So maybe a parent needs you, maybe a problem with property. You don't want to be investing in property at this time. You might be selling property, but in general, this is a weak time for Martian things. So in your case, there can also be some health issues around this period. Go easy with yourself around that 18th to 22nd of July. As I said in my earlier introduction, that period of mid-July is we have the Mercury retrograde happening at the same time as the Mars transit, and therefore there can be some instability, which might overshadow some of the positive things that the new moon in Cancer is generally bringing for you this month. There's something so simple and amazing about this Cancer new moon for Cancer Rising because it very clearly spells out that this is a new beginning for you and it's a new time of inspiration, of reinventing yourself, of general prosperity coming your way. And I know that in the introduction I mentioned that there's a lot of difficult transits at play in July, which there are, I will talk about. But I think it's important rather to focus on the fact that it's also an amazing time to consider a reset. And it's not just for this month, but this is like a reset for the whole year. So this month, I feel we're fully activating Jupiter entering Cancer, because Jupiter also is the planet that has to do with bringing you the philosophy that you have in life and bringing you that sort of fullness of life. Okay, so it's giving you an optimism that maybe you didn't see while Jupiter was in Gemini in this last year. So that's something that we're starting with. We're getting this fresh new identity, we're getting a new lease on life, and also we're getting an ability to think big. And that's something that is also being emphasized in this year's eclipses, which is like, think big. Don't allow yourself to get sort of sucked into just having to do the small itty bitty things or working with a couple of people. Go global, go large. Allow yourself to expand your horizons in this period, and this new moon is emphasizing that. Now, on the flip side, as I mentioned before, we do have some challenges with career, because from now until through August, you do have a preview of what's happening between 2026 to 2028, where Saturn is making you work hard for your career. So it's one of the most important career transits that you're going to be having. So don't be discouraged by challenges that might come up, especially in this first 2 weeks when Saturn and Neptune are both slowing down to go retrograde. And especially because Saturn is a relationship planet for you. So if you're bringing on business partners, you want to be extra careful. Or if you're in a contract with somebody, you want to be even more mindful around the times of the retrogrades. Neptune is retrograde the 4th of July. Saturn is retrograde around 12th, 13th of July. We also have a full moon in Capricorn, which highlights contracts and partnerships around the 10th of July. So basically the first half of July has some instances where you do want to tread carefully with contracts, even though this is overall still a good opportunity for you to expand on your horizons and for you to think big and reinvent yourself. So that's one thing that I would keep in the back of my mind. The second thing is that around the 18th of July, we also are going to have Mars running into the South Node. And Mars is important for you because it has to do with your career. At this period, you may let go of something in your career. Just as much as you're reinventing yourself, you may find that you need to flush something down the toilet, flush something down the astral tubes. You may have some problems with peers around that time, or your brothers, or just general issues with properties as well. So not to kind of overcommit yourself in those areas of life. And be mindful that it could be a time of a destabilization, but this is a period of letting go just as much as it is a period of entering new things into your life. Mercury retrograding from the 18th of July until the 11th of August, around the same time as that difficult Mars transit, is a time to also be mindful and prudent around finances. So already we talked about between September 2024 to June 2025, there was a lot of back and forth with like expenses and money kind of outflow. This isn't quite the same thing. It's more just that there can be some niggles with money and needing to kind of repeatedly go back to the finances. So in general, we're seeing positivity for Cancer Rising. We just have to be mindful of certain periods in the month and certain specific areas of our life where things could be affected. For Leo Rising, when I think about all of the different rising signs, this one's going to be a little bit more challenging as a month. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but what I would say is that it is a month of rest. It is a month of rest because the new moon is happening in the part of your chart that is about taking a step back from the big world outside and looking inwards. So there is a need for some emotional reset of some type. And it's also a time where you may not want to be out all the time. Listen to that is what I'm saying. The second thing is that the eclipses are also still hovering about, and they are reminding us that this is a year in which it's time to think about your psychological well-being. It's a good time to take a step back and look after your mental health. So we have a second indication of that. And the third thing is that Saturn and Neptune are currently making you reevaluate what your life philosophy is, what you stand for, what your value system is about, especially in that first 2 weeks of July when Neptune and Saturn are both going retrograde. It gives us a more internal energy. You may need to take another step back and think, okay, well, is this the direction that I'm actually wanting to head in? So we have all of these different indicators this month that says, you know what, take a chill pill. Maybe this isn't the time where we want to go out and do a lot of things. You may find that around the 10th of July in the full moon in Capricorn, there is a sort of push-pull factor of like, I need to get out or I need to rest. I need to get out, I need to rest. And you can decide at that time what's appropriate for you. But that would be a period in which you may experience that the most in that culmination of that month. The other thing is that Mercury will be retrograde in the sign of Leo from the 18th of July until the 11th of August. And this is actually, I would say, a really important period of redeveloping yourself, like looking inwards, writing. There's a period of creativity. There's a period of also strong meditation messages coming through for you. And it could be a very productive time. So again, it's still emphasizing a more internal nature. I think the Mercury retrograde can be difficult when you're dealing with things like needing to communicate externally. But if you're using this time as a period of being pensive and a period of just reflection and thinking about what your skills are and what you need to enhance and what you want to learn, I think it can be a very profound time. Wait until the new moon in Leo around the 24th of July, which I'll be talking about in my next video, to go out and do something new, because that's going to present a whole new, more external energy. But for the time being, in the month of July, we're feeling a little bit kind of needing to step back. Also be mindful that around that 18th of July period when Mercury goes retrograde, we also have difficult transits with Mars. And in this period, you may find some financial difficulties, some outflows. You don't want to be doing anything property related at that time. You may get rid of properties and you might want to move, or you might want to make some changes around that area of your life, but you don't want to be adding to that. So be prudent around your finances. This is still a year in which financial prudence is advised for Leo rising, but especially around this month and especially around the 18th to 22nd of July. For Virgo rising, this is an interesting month because we're highlighting your bigger visions, your goals, your hopes and dreams, the things that you want to do for yourself in the long term. And if you need to network, if you need to expand your community, you want to even be more on social media and be out there a little bit more, this is a good time to do that. There can be a tendency to get a little myopic and want to look at very detailed matters. But actually, this is a great time to think bigger picture and allow yourself to use this month to activate those energies. Now, at the same time, Mars is in Virgo until the first week of August, and this can be very motivating physically, even though it's not a great placement for Mars to be in because it can lead to a lot of overthinking, analysis paralysis. So you do want to be mindful of that during this period, but it can also give you a big boost of energy. Be careful between the 18th to the 22nd of July when Mars is weaker then. And you may be more prone to injury, to anxiety, to losses, accidents. Stay away from stray dogs. Watch when you're cutting vegetables. Don't text and drive at the same time. So just be a little bit more prudent around that and manage your financials a little bit better around this period. I'm saying that also because Mercury will be retrograde from the 18th of July until the 11th of August. And in this period, it's a great time to go on a retreat. It's a good time to get away, allow yourself to think about those bigger picture things, maybe have an art retreat, do something good for yourself, allow your internal world to blossom. Okay, so we've got a few things happening at once. I would also say that this is a period where doing selfless work can be especially rewarding for you because there are a number of factors in the chart that are being activated which have to do with giving of yourself, allowing yourself to step into service, thinking about your more philanthropic endeavors. And so if you have been kind of toying around with the idea of maybe doing something more of that, you could actually use this month to do something. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It doesn't have to be a huge donation of money or anything along those lines. It can even be just a little bit of acts of service in your daily life that'll allow you to feel a little bit more fulfilled, especially in that 18th to 22nd of July period. Libra Rising. This is important because it's highlighting your 10th house of career, meaning that the new moon is inaugurating a new professional identity for you. And Although Jupiter is in the house of career for the entire year until June of 2026, this new moon is sort of activating this transit in a way and reminding you that yes, you are starting something fresh. So even if you're not changing your career or profession entirely, you're still stepping out into the world as a new person. And that's what the 10th house is. It's what the world is seeing you as. Now, there is some friction going on with relationships because Saturn and Neptune are in your house of relationships, and those planets can create haziness, they can create difficulties and obstacles where relationships are concerned, especially if you have planets at 0 to 2 degrees of Aries, or if your 7th house cusp is there. So it's not going to be creating havoc for every Libra rising, but if you have degrees activated, it's definitely going to be stronger. And you want to be mindful of new contracts at this time. So I would advise not to enter into new contracts within the month of July, really, but definitely around the time of the retrograde dates that I mentioned in my introduction, around the 4th of July for Neptune, 12th to 13th of July for Saturn. All right. In the middle of the month, 18th to 22nd of July, Mars will also be going over the South Node. And because Mars represents clients, it represents partnerships for you, you may find that those elements of life are exiting. So there's already some trouble with relationships are concerned, but maybe in this period, you're going to let go of relationships. Try not to enter into new relationships while Mars is going over the South Node, because you're just going against the tide. It's rather a good time to end contracts, like maybe something's not working out with a client or a supplier or provider. Then you want to say no to those people and you want to move out of that relationship. Remember to keep a macro level idea that you are going into a new phase of your life where you're entering into a new professional identity, and you want to take that energy with us. In the month of July, Venus is also further emphasizing this idea of your belief system, what you stand for, really coming into yourself in some fashion. Consider that those things are all pointing you to the direction of a bigger thing, but it's not going to be without its losses. There's definitely going to be something that you have to let go of during this period. Now, Mercury will also be retrograde from the 18th of July until the 11th of August. And I see this as more of an opportunity for you to consider what are your long-term visions, thinking about your goal planning, teaching maybe, thinking about courses that you want to take or that you want to give. But in general, this is going to be active through most of August as well. So Mercury retrograde is not necessarily detrimental in any way for you, but it might be a period of you kind of further going inwards to consider, what is this new identity that I'm stepping into, and what are the components that need to be put into play in the long term for me to really act on that. I think for Scorpio Rising, this is a very interesting period of renewal, and it may come unexpected, thinking like, what does Cancer have to do with renewal? But there is a slightly philosophical theme to this month where you're sort of stepping into yourself somehow and renewing your identity, what you believe in, what you stand for. So that's the main focus of this month. However, this new identity is not coming without its sacrifices, let's say, because there's still a lot of hard work that needs to be put into your new career or your new life or whatever it is that you're trying to reshape. And this is a preview period. July and August is going to be a preview period for what's to come from 2026 for a couple of years. In this period, 2026 onwards, you're going to undergo quite a big shift. So bear this in mind, that this month is actually the precursor to all that's about to happen. You're starting to solidify and formulate, okay, what am I doing? What direction am I taking? How am I making my decisions? And then later on next year, things are going to start to really take shape. The other thing is that around mid-July, 18th to the 22nd of July, Mars is in a weak shape, and this is an important planet for you. So you may be more prone to burnout or to illness, to stress, to accidents. You just be mindful of that. Again, it's chart dependent. I don't want to scare anybody, but it's just a time where you want to lay low and not try to overexert yourself and not try to energize yourself in some fashion. You may find that this is a time where you're letting go of some part of your identity or even some part of your vision that hasn't really worked out the way that you think it should have or doesn't really make sense anymore. Learning is also at the top of your mind right now. You may need to be thinking about what kind of skills do I need? What is it that I need to improve on in order to be able to take those next steps? You might be voraciously kind of consuming content at the moment, and you might have an interest in traveling and understanding and developing your senses. Especially around the 10th of July, we have a full moon that's activating the part of your charts that are relating to travel and to learning and to growth. Mercury's retrograde is around that 18th of July until the 11th of August, and it's going to be active through most of August. It's going to be a period of surprises and reflection on your career. That's where the focus of your mind is going to be. So it's not exactly a relaxing transit, let's say, but it's also not very frequent, because the last time that Mercury was retrograde in Leo fully was in the summer of 2018. Now, bear in mind that in that year, your career house is also being activated by eclipses, so we can't really compare those two exactly. But what I'm trying to illustrate is that the Mercury retrograde period is going to reveal something, some messages, some hints, some type of information for you about what those next steps are going to be. Because starting from 2026, your career is going to start to make some changes. And this Mercury retrograde period, I believe, is going to be giving you some initial hints at what to look at. So in summary, we've got the big new moon thinking about your identity, what you believe in, what you stand for, and giving you a type of renewal. But there's definitely a lot of hard work coming up, which I know that you're not afraid to do, but that it's not going to be completely handed over to you. Sagittarius Rising, this is a month of transformation. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of deep inner psychological work that's happening. On the one hand, that a lot of people just aren't seeing from the external viewpoint. But on the other hand, you may be also making some professional changes, reevaluating professional identity, letting go of a certain job or company or some role that you have, because we're coming into an apex around the 18th to the 22nd of July. Now, eclipses have already been kind of pointing you in that direction, like there's going to be a change, but you may experience one of the significant changes during this time. This is also a period of inner psychological work, and it has to do also with the fact that you're going through a time of reevaluating how you see yourself as a creative individual, how you see yourself being able to fully express yourself, and there's some tension there. And there's going to be some tension for the next couple of years in this regard. But the new moon is really highlighting that. And because, as I said, this is a very internal experience, people from the outside might not see it. Except, of course, if you're in a partnership or if you're in a deep relationship where you're exchanging these ideas on an emotional level, on a psychological level, in which case you might feel like, yeah, there is some tension. I'm not really fully able to open up, or there's some things that I need to work through, or that we both need to work through. This is the month that that's going to happen. So in the same vein, anything that you share with somebody, whether that's like the emotional space, but also financially, this is another theme that's going to come up. Finances, how you manage your money, inheritances, taxes, estate matters, mortgages, any of these matters which we need in order to have a survival mechanism will be highlighted as well this month. And you may be dealing with an inheritance matter at the moment that will become more of a focal point between that 25th of June period, culminating on the 10th of July, which is activating both financial houses for you. This is a time where you want to be prudent around your financial investments, because a number of different planetary transits are happening right now, which are weaker for risky investments. So where you can this month, be prudent around financial decisions. Now, the other element is that Mercury will be retrograde from the 18th of July until the 11th of August. And this is actually a really great time to consume knowledge, to learn, to improve your self-awareness. I know you're already doing that on a regular basis, but this is going to be compounded during the Mercury retrograde, and its effects will be through August as well. So you can use this as a time to really have a little bit of self-growth for yourself. And this is particularly interesting because Mercury is in Leo, which is a masculine sign, which allows you to process information intellectually, but also because the new moon is in Cancer with Jupiter, and therefore that's allowing you to process information from an emotional perspective. And the two of those things can be quite a potent combination. Lastly, if you have your 7th house cusp at 0 degrees or 2 degrees, 0 to 2 degrees of Gemini, you want to be mindful of relationships at this time, because this is going to create some disruption to relationships that you have in your life, whether that's business partnerships, whether that's romantic partnerships. It's not advisable, especially during the Mercury retrograde period, to undergo any legal disputes, any legal battles. You want to sort of put that aside until after next month when Mercury is out of retrograde. But also just to know that Uranus entering your 7th house of relationships is a 7-year transit. And that's not meaning that it's going to be creating chaos for 7 years, but it will mean that after the 7-year period, you will come out of that with a new lens on how your relationships are in your life, whether that's in your personal life and your romantic partner, or whether that's just how you deal with people in general. So nothing to really fear here. It's more just that it's worthwhile mentioning that this is an important transit. Uranus is entering Gemini now and will be going in there permanently from spring of 2026. But it's something to sort of just watch out for, especially if you have planets between 0 to 2 degrees of Gemini for this month. For Capricorn Rising, this is an important new moon because it's activating your house of partnerships. So what it is it's bringing you new opportunities for clients, for partners, for a romantic partner, fundraising. It's a great time to get resources from people. You're meeting a lot of different people outside in the world. And in fact, this is going to be present for you for the entire year, but it's really active because the new moon is highlighting that area of your life this month. From June 25th until that 24th of July, around then, the new moon in Leo. However, the internal world, where you need to stay grounded and connected to yourself and centered, especially if you're a woman in this case, is going to be a little bit more challenged. It's going to be a little bit more destabilized. And this month and the next month of August, you're also experiencing a preview of what 2026 will look like for the next couple of years. And that's going to be a period of really establishing where you feel grounded, where you feel centered, what do you call home? How do you create a sense of stillness for yourself that's not validated by the external world? So there is some tension while on the one hand, the external world is validating you, but on the other hand, are you feeling validated inside? So that's the tension that I would say is really key for Capricorn Rising. This might feel especially prominent around the 10th of July because we're going to have a full moon in Capricorn. So that's going to be highlighting relationships in your life. And my recommendation is that for the first half of your month, try not to overbook yourself because that's going to cause unnecessary stress. Later on in the second half of the month, around the 18th to the 22nd of July, there may be some times where you just need to let go of a few things. You're not going to be able to take everything on board. And you might feel a little bit sort of out of it, let's say. Try not to book any travel between the 18th and the 22nd of July. You have trouble through travels around this time, just general difficulties. And it's also the time where Mercury is going to start to go retrograde until the 11th of August. And in your case, Mercury's retrograde is going to be about deep internal psychological processing. So, because the planet is there and going to be active through most of August, basically, you want to have your good mental habits in place. Your external life is very full, and you want to be able to have your journaling, automatic writing, your therapy, your sound healing, whatever it is that you do to stay sane and to stay above board. Do those things, because the Mercury retrograde can sometimes cause us to get too much into our heads, and then we're not able to kind of see clearly. Instead, it's actually a great time for that self-reflection. You're going to try and find a balance between the external stuff that's going on, meeting all the people, having all the opportunities, and then also the stuff that's going on internally to stay grounded, to figure out where home is, to be aligned with yourself, and to have good mental habits. One more thing is that the 18th to the 22nd of July is not a great time to enter into new partnerships. So I'm saying that specifically for you because there's a lot of opportunities right now. And there will be until June of 2026. So depending, of course, on the degree of your 7th house cusp and other planets, etc. But generally speaking, that's where the opportunities are. But between that 18th to the 22nd of July, tread carefully if you are in a new relationship or if you're planning on entering one. For Aquarius Rising, if I can only give one word for this entire month, it's health. And almost every transit is somehow related to this concept of health. And I know it's like the summer in the Northern Hemisphere and everybody wants to let go and not think too much about the routines, but this new moon is actually in the part of your chart activating daily routines, daily health and wellness. And on the physical level, it's saying, okay, avoid fats, watch your liver, be kind to it, figure out what's going on there. On an emotional level, it's saying, think about how your emotional health is affecting your physical health. And at the same time, there is at an intellectual level a need to think about how you're communicating. Are you communicating effectively? Are you communicating clearly? So around this month also, it's a good time to think about if you're entering into contracts and things like that, be very mindful. This new moon, therefore, is all about getting into those healthy habits or reactivating them if you feel like you need to. And as I always say, there's personal milestones. So for some of you, this is going to be more important than others. And it's especially important if you're 29, 43, 53, or 65 years old at the time of this video, because then health is also going to be another one of those key factors for the whole year for you. So something to keep in the back of your mind. The 10th of July is also a really important full moon because it's going to highlight this opposition of needing to get into a good routine and escapism. Needing to get into a good routine, escapism. So you might be feeling that push-pull factor at that time. I would recommend getting rid of stuff on that full moon because full moons are an excellent time for things like parasite cleanses, but also just exercising your demons. Or if you don't have an opportunity around then, you can also try around the 18th to the 22nd of July, which is also a great time to be getting rid of things. However, around that period, you want to be watching out for professional curveballs as well as financial ups and downs. Mitigating some risk this month is also advisable. Around the 18th of July, it's also the start of the Mercury retrograde until the 11th of August. And this is happening in your house of partnerships. So you want to be mindful of partnerships. You want to be mindful of new contracts. You don't want to enter into new contracts or read them really clearly. If you are in a relationship, then you want to make sure that you are communicating clearly. Again, this is very pertinent because you're also going through a preview period of learning how to communicate clearly on a bigger scale. So the Mercury retrograde is sort of identifying this as one of the key themes for this month. So zooming back out, the health factor is still there, but during that 18th of July to the 11th of August period, the Mercury retrograde is going to be highlighting partnership factors more so. If you're in a relationship, then this might be a good time to do couples therapy. It might be a good time to learn about new techniques for communication because our mind is a little bit more open then. We're actually able to kind of see things on a different level that's not so left brain all the time. And using the Mercury retrograde for that, even though it can be bumpy and difficult and maybe not so obvious, is actually not a bad experiment. And lastly, we have Uranus transiting into Gemini on the 7th of July. And this is really important if you have your house cusps at 0 to 2 degrees of Gemini. And what I mean by that is it will be the start of a period between now and roughly 2032 where you are reinventing your sense of creativity. You're already very creative. I know Aquarius Rising is full of ideas, but this is going to signal a time of stepping into some new ideas that you didn't know were there. And in this first month, we get a little preview of that. So again, it's only really relevant if you've got house cusps or planets at 0 to 2 degrees of Gemini. But I think it's worth mentioning that it's like a preview into this next 7 years where you are undergoing a significant change and transformation. This will only really be possible if you have the foundational health element in place. So that's where I want to bring it back to this new moon, is about setting those good routines in place. For Pisces Rising, this is all about stepping into the best version of yourself and how you fully express yourself, what your personal brand is. And it would even be interesting to think about how you extend your personal brand, like maybe your hobbies or your skill set, into the long term when we have our full moon in Capricorn on the 10th of July. So that sort of links how you express yourself on a personal level to maybe how you see yourself in the bigger vision. Okay, so that's one element of this month. The other thing is that you still need to be prudent around finances, even though it's a great time for entrepreneurship. So you've got your ideas, you know, you've seeded some of them, but you still need to be prudent around how you spend money, about how you make money, because in this month, you have a preview for what's to come in the next couple of years in terms of just getting a little bit more refined and strict around how you manage your finances. Around the middle of the month, things can get a little bit wobbly. So between the 18th to the 22nd of July, you may find yourself getting rid of people in your life, whether that's a client or a partner or somebody in your life with whom you have a tight relationship. It's not a great time to enter into new relationships. If you do enter into a new relationship, you're setting yourself up for something that might be draining or something that might be difficult. So you do want to tread carefully. This is definitely one of those exes coming back type transits. So know what you're getting yourself into in this case. I also think it's important to tread carefully at this time because around that 18th of July period until the 11th of August, we have Mercury retrograde in Leo. And this is going to be important because you're reevaluating a lot of elements about your daily life. And I know you've already been doing that at a much bigger structural level, let's say, because Saturn has been in Pisces for the last couple of years. But in this month, between the 18th of July to the 11th of August, it's really about kind of getting more the nitty-gritty parts of your life organized, including your home. Okay, so including property matters. Now, if you are needing to move, if you are thinking about relocating, this is not an ideal time to sign a new lease. You may be looking for things at this time and you want to continue doing that, that's fine. Know that whatever it is that you're dealing with may not be resolved immediately until that first week of September, because the Mercury retrograde will certainly be active through most of August. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that Uranus moving into Gemini on the 7th of July is important because it's suggesting a new change in your home life between now and 2032. Now that's a really long time. So you really need to know, where is my fourth house cusp? What degree is it at? If it's between 0 to 2 degrees of Gemini, then you're going to find that you may actually have a move coming up in the next year. However, if it's not, then you may find, okay, this is going to be a little bit later. This is just a preview period of what's to come in the future. So where home is concerned, don't be too much of a hurry to make some changes, because I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of chops and changes for the next while. In summary, for Pisces Rising, know that this is a great time for your personal self-expression and an opportunity to really step into yourself and not be too bogged down by all of the challenges that you've had from Saturn being in Pisces these last 2 years. But that's not meaning that you should just throw all caution into the wind. You still have to be financially prudent. You still want to be managing the relationships that you're in and also looking after your home life.